Hello and welcome, dear viewer, to another SerenityOS hacking video. Thought I'd do another one of these, and today it should be a bit shorter. So, a couple of days ago I talked with Gecha over the Discord, and they are one of the main contributors to the fonts. They make a lot of cool fonts, and they said that it would be really nice to have a feature where you could dump all of the characters or all of the defined code points in a font. Now specifically, let me actually look that up on Discord real quick. Yes, that's exactly what they said. They said that it would be great to have a JSON export of all the defined glyphs in a font or all the defined code points. So let's write a tool for that. I'll call it font dump. It will be a utilities tool. So let's go into utilities and let's start by copying an existing utility maybe. Let's see, what do we want to? Let's copy. Is cat already ported to Serenity main? Yeah, okay, let's copy that and paste it. Cat copy, cat. That's a good joke. That wasn't even intentional. Font dump is the name of the new tool. Let's change that to 2022 and my name. Can't even type. Oops. Okay. Let's see. So we want std.io path. That's actually a good one. Now let's see. Let's start with the options. And let's keep it general. So maybe we could extend this tool in the future to have more features than just that. Okay, what a positional argument. I'm not super familiar with these fancy, is that? No, that's not actually the fancy way of adding arguments. There's a more fancy way of adding arguments. I think all I want to have for now is a positional argument for a path, which would be this override with a string view. So add positional arguments. We want string view. Font path. Font path. It is required. It should be, yeah, called path, and we parse that from the main arguments. So if you're not familiar, we don't use the C++ main anymore. We use Serenity main instead, which simply gives us a nice interface. We can return an error, so we can use try, and we have a more useful data structure which contains the arguments in a more useful data structure. Yeah, so it's basically just a main function, a special. Okay, so here we actually depledge. I think I'll just delete anything from here on. That would be like, what is it? Let's try 30 lines. That was too much. And let's see if we can make this work. In case you're wondering, I'm using the Vim extension that allows me to use Vim motions. That's just freely available on the Visual Studio Code Marketplace. Okay, let's see. So we want to access fonts. I know that there's a new character map tool, so let's maybe look up character map and how they access fonts. Let's see what we have here. Character map widget. They use libgui glyph map widget. Probably a new thing. Unicode character types. But we actually care about the font stuff. Hey, cool. I think VS Code just crashed. Or at least it pretends to have crashed. Okay, so Visual Studio actually decided to crash there, which is interesting. I've never seen that kind of crash before. I am currently looking for what sort of a library we're using to load fonts. Let's maybe try Font Editor. I've never worked on fonts before. We have the graphics font database. Oh, that might be it. Oh no, that's just the font get. That's just the database, which would make sense. We have a save action somewhere. Let's see what the save action does. That should be in font editor.h. Save file. Let's see, saved font. Oh, that's graphics bitmap font. Okay. Well, that's not all RefPitter, but let's look here. Okay, don't think we need any of these. Okay, so I can just ask it to load a bitmap font from a file and then ask it for properties of glyphs, or just ask it for a single glyph. And for contains glyph, do we have like a, for each glyph, we have a glyph count. Okay, so range size, glyph index of that code point. I'm not 100% confident I know how the glyph format exactly, font format exactly works, because of course we can have ranges of code points that are very far apart, which means that we can't just store all of the in-between glyphs as just being empty, because that would waste huge amounts of space. But I think that that will be fine. Or maybe I will have to look at font itself, graphics font. Here we have contains glyph, except then I would have to iterate over the entire Unicode range, which I guess isn't too bad, but it's also not really good. I have a glyph count, and then I have a contains glyph. Okay, so let's think about that. I mean, depending on how fast this function runs, there are about 13,000 Unicode code points, a bit more probably, which means that we would have to iterate over at maximum 13,000 values. But by using the font count, we can also just stop whenever we have enumerated all of the code points that actually do exist. So I think I'll put this on the side here so that I can reference the interface, and then I'll start here. Okay, then first of all, we have to get our font, which is graphics bitmap font load from file, font path. Now, can this fail? This is a RefPitter, which probably means that it can fail. So this might not be the font. So if maybe font equals null, then we outline, or we warn line font could not be loaded with the font path, and we return, or wait, we can just return error. I can't type from string, and that is a string formatted. And I also like, I just noticed, I think that's new, that my colored brackets, which is a rather new feature in VS Code, are now themed by the actual theme. So you can see these are Monokai colors. This is the Monokai red, this is the Monokai orange, and the Monokai green, and so on, which is quite nice, because previously there were these bleak, strong colors that didn't really fit with the theme. That's just an aside. Why does it complain here? That might, or I can just use is null. I think that's a better idea. So you might be noticing, as with my last video, sometimes I just ignore these errors because they're false positives. That just happens with ClangD sometimes. I know there's some fixes that I could try, but I didn't put in the time yet. That's basically it. Let's actually delete all of those, because that's all we need right now. And so, okay. Now we can auto font equals maybe font.release null. Cool. Now we have a font. Let's try iterating over the glyphs. Okay. Total glyphs equals font.glyph count. Treated glyphs is 0. This is a size T. This is a size T. Okay. Well, total glyphs, or is greater than, what would that be? What is the maximum Unicode value actually? Let me open up Firefox. Okay, so let's search for the highest Unicode code point, and that was actually my guess, 10 FFFF, which would make sense, which should be the end of the private use area B, the highest plane of the private use area, because there's like a very large space in between that aren't used, as far as I know. And yeah, so most of the ones in between are either undefined or private use area. FFF. Let's go with 10 FFFF. And let's put in a fix me for that. Possible number. And that should be a less than or equal to. and that is not treated glyph, but okay, and the current code point is 0. Let's actually start at the null character. I don't care. Contains glyph. Yeah. Okay. So if, and of course, finally, the metric that we actually care about is a list of all glyphs that do exist. So vector of, I think, do we want to store the glyphs? Let's actually look up what the glyph data structure does. That's a rather big one. Yeah, it contains the bitmap, which makes sense. It doesn't even store its code point. So yeah, so let's just store a vector of u32 exit and find glyphs. This vector, what is that? How does that work? I'm not entirely sure. I don't think there's a constructor with like a preset size or something. I'm just used to that kind of API in most programming languages. Show capacity, because that's how I usually do it. Glyphs, because then we don't have to, or technically we will allocate twice here. Of course, allocations don't really matter in this kind of utility program, but either way, I try to code performantly all the time. So let's see if the font contains the glyph, the current code points, then we define glyphs.append the current code points and the treated glyphs are incremented. And we only, so treated glyphs are of course the amount of actual glyphs, not the amount of code points we have looked at so far. So we only increment that in the case we have it. But we always increase the current code point. So that's fantastic. Yeah, okay. So that's how that works. And I think if we're done with that, we can just tell it to print that as a JSON. Now let's see if there's something like a JSON array. Because I know that there's a like small JSON library thing. So I can JSON array from a vector, and then I can probably serialize it to a string. Okay, so JSON code point list is JSON array over the defined glyphs dot toString. Can I not call the constructor? I can. Of course, I'll have to. Okay, JSON array. Okay. Now we should just be able to outline JSON code point list. Cool. Also, let's be a very nice program, if we run out of space here, then we'll crash. And the same thing goes for this, because those can all technically run out of memory, although it might be unlikely. It's better to be safe and it doesn't cost us much. So let's try that. I think we're basically done here. Now I have to create the Cmake config, which will be this file, the wrong file. Let's find the Cmake list for the utilities, and let's find flock in here so that we stay sorted. And we need target link libraries for font dump. We need lib main and lib graphics. Now let's see, append recommended targets. It's above fortune, so let's do font dump here. I think that's everything. As long as it's in the, as long as it's here, it's doing a Serenity component for each. That should work. Now I don't know, or I will probably do that off stream, how to make it run on Lagom, because this application only like reads files and does some internal calculations and stuff and uses libraries, so it should be fine to run on Lagom. And that will be the actual use case of Checha, because they would like to run the program and auto-generate a font completion table for their website. So that's something that should definitely be possible with this utility, but I don't know currently how Lagom works. I'll probably ask that in the Discord later after the recording. So probably by the time you watch this video, it will already be possible to run this application on Lagom if it's not already merged. Okay, so anyways, let's try launching 64-bit build. I hope that we won't have to recompile much, because that hope was promptly crushed because I pulled this morning. Okay, it's probably all C-cached. I pulled this morning 30 new commits, I think, so it should not be too bad. Let's hope. Looks like the GUI was modified, so that is quite significant. Remember to hydrate while you're watching the video. And also I just noticed that this should be an AND, because if either of these conditions fails, we want to break out of the loop. So we'll probably have to recompile that, but it shouldn't take too long. Let's just hope that the build runs at all. I had some issues yesterday when trying out the new mold linker, which Daniel was working on getting to run, and I was testing it out on my machine because he couldn't get any good measurements. So I did some measurements and I had to change up the toolchain for that. So I hope that it works, but it looks like it's good. While we're at it, let's see how, maybe try to research how Lagom actually does things. Should be somewhere in meta Lagom That is, yeah, those Cmake files should be a deleted directory. Not entirely sure. Tools. No, that's Lagom specific tools. That's not recompiling other tools or something. Let's see. This looks rather good. I'm not very familiar with, or rather, I'm totally unfamiliar with Cmake. So these are the libraries. Lagom libraries. Lagom utilities, lib test, markdown, test wasm, shell. Test.js. Let's maybe search for JavaScript, because we should have the, that's all. We should have JS somewhere, just the plain JS console. Yeah, that's test.js, but that's not what we want. We want lib.js itself. Except maybe I'll also not do that. Instead, we'll try and check that the program actually works. Of course, I'll have to fix that. Have to fix that up. I mean, the only reason why this would fail is that the total glyph count is off. Okay, it doesn't currently boot. So I'll be back in just a few minutes when I've fixed that. So while this builds, I just got a hint from Andrew. Thanks, Andrew, for how to make a utility compile in Lagom. I have to add it to this list. And he said, look at htime or disasm. So I'm here, and I think I'll just add it to the chronological point, which would be up here. So let's just take those 3 lines, paste them in here, and change all of that to font dump. Font dump Lagom under user line utilities font dump.cpp. Output name font dump. Target link libraries Lagom core. No, I'm pretty sure that I don't need Lagom elf. I need Lagom x86, Lagom main. Let's hope that Lagom GFX exists. Does it? Yes, it does. Okay, that's cool. And I guess a K should be in there implicitly. And what else do I need? I need libcore, libgraphics, libmain, core. Don't need x86, libcore, libmain, libgraphics. Okay. Cool. So this is still going and downloading the Unicode database after recompiling Clang, as you might notice up here. I just skipped that for you in the video because it took some time. Not entirely sure if that will work properly, otherwise we'll have a very disappointing ending. Not sure if I can just build Lagom here. I probably can't. No. Yeah, that's because the other build is still running. Is that even the Unicode character database? Something like that. Okay, so let's try build lagom again. I won't try a full system build this time, because I hope lagom will work better as system server is somehow borked. I'll probably have to clean my toolchain directory for that. So let's just build that for now. And it complains about pledge is not a member of core system, which it is, except is that is if deft to Serenity. Well, that's not really an issue. I mean, pledge is an optional or like a security mitigation syscall that tells the system, well, I am only going to do these very specific things, like reading a file and producing standard output in our case. So it's not really necessary to have it. And if we just had, yeah, I think I'll have to if def Serenity and if I think that's fine. Now I'm not entirely sure if I need to. No, that's unveil. I don't need to lock the pledge or something. That's not how that works. I only need to lock, yeah, I need to lock the veil, but there's not like locking the pledge or something. As soon as you pledge, all other permissions are stripped from your program, and you can only like pledge to remove even more permissions, but you can't add permissions back. Which is the reason why the original cat file that I copied had a pledge up here, the exact same pledge, and had another pledge down here, which removed its capabilities further to not even be able to read a path. So it could just do standard input and standard output, which of course is great for security because the kernel will happily kill the process the instant it tries to do anything that isn't allowed by the pledge. And this is actually a syscall that Linux, for example, doesn't have, as far as I know. I think some BSD invented it, and Andreas implemented it because he thought it was nice, and I agree with him. And this is just a very nice security-focused syscall and operating system feature. And let's hope that this thing builds. Most of these hiccups from building are just from disk overhead when it writes out to disk. I already corrected this, so we should be fine here. That's a long time ago that I did that. Run lagom font dump, probably. Okay, cool. Dump information argument path. Okay. Font dump. Now let's see, where's the bitmap font, binres fonts. I don't want to print it for Katika 12 because Katika regular 12 because that is a massive font. That has a lot of things. And let's use source maybe. Base res fonts source regular 10. Okay, that looks very nice. I don't exactly recognize these, or rather I can just look up to my ASCII table and decimal, that's 33, right? It starts with 32. Yeah, 32 is space, of course. And then we have exclamation mark, quote, hash, percent, or something like that, $sign. Then we get to ABCDEFG, which is these 40s numbers. That makes a lot of sense. Now I don't recognize this code point. But I think the build time or the runtime is perfectly fine. Let's try Katika. Katika regular 10, I think, is the massive font. Yeah, that is just absolute chonker. That looks very cool. You can see up here we have a bunch of consecutive code points, and maybe I'll put that on screen right now, what this range is, but it also should start with something similar with, yeah, 32, 33, and so on. Okay, well, that's all I wanted to do today. This is the new font dump utility. I haven't tested it in the system, but if it works on Lagom, it should surely work in Serenity itself, and now Checha can run this and use it for their website. The only issue is that, yeah, I think if I don't actually know where the binaries for Lagom are installed, but maybe that's probably build, right? Build Lagom. Is there just font dump here? /font dump. There is. Okay, so I think they can just, let's use that again and just /font dump here. And of course we'll have to change the path for //. Cool. So they can run that and just pipe the output into some JSON tool that can take that and figure out the appropriate ranges and generate HTML based on it. I think that's what they want to do. So that's sort of my contribution to this font completion table that I'll also definitely link in the description. I'll of course link the PR for this feature and the SerenityOS project itself in the description. Come hang out on the Discord server, and until next time, goodbye.